Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for joining me. Um, it
Mhm.
is 6 on the dot, so I thought we better get going. My name's Elli Cassidy. I'm sure most of you probably know that. That's why you're here. But I really appreciate you giving me your time today. So, couple of questions for you while we wait for a few more people to trickle in. We've got a little chat box, and what I would love to know is where you're watching from today, and also what drink have you got? I've gone for a really boring water, though I was craving a red wine and thought I'm just going to knock it and make a mess. So, have you gone for? Are you like Barry from Birmingham with a beer, or are you Wendy from Wolverhampton with a wine? So, let me know in the chat who you are, where you're from, and what you're drinking. And I've also got a couple of little polls I'd like to find out from you just to give me an idea of what you think your experience level is roughly. And also, I'd love to know what your biggest challenge is with newborn photography. So while we just wait a minute or two for a few more people to come in, you're coming in thick and fast. Yeah, if you have a look in the chat and the interactions, that would be awesome. Let's have a look. Also with a boring water, Kate, yeah, and Jim. Susie with a cup of tea, now that is a good call. I should have done that. Manny with strong flat white. Chantal, that's not fair. I've got to wait till after before I can eat. Oh, fabulous. Okay, you're coming in nicely with your poll answers as well for me. So a real mix today of people, lots of you beginners and a fair few intermediates, and then a few advanced and professionals. I'm hoping there'll be something for everyone here, and you'll all take a little nugget of something away, because I think you can never learn enough and learn from enough different trainers. Everyone's going to give you slightly different viewpoints or insights into things. So fingers crossed there'll be something there that you can all use. Drinking a Coke. Samantha, hello. South Coast, Stephanie, I hope you've got better weather down here than up here. We've got awful weather here today. Orange juice and tonic. I really thought that was going to say orange juice, gin and tonic. Then you've let me down, Stephanie. More people eating dinner. Thorna from Falkirk. I think the wine. I should have put it in the course notes. Everybody bring a wine with you. Lucas said, I hope so. Island, hi Terry. Jeeves here. Okay. Kind of a quick scan down your big has finding clients, setting up a safe environment, posing newborns, lighting and equipment. I'm going to go through lots of these today, especially safe environments, posing newborns, lighting and equipment. We'll touch on all of those for you. Okay, I'm going to get going. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat as we go, but we will have time for Q&A at the end as well. So if it's relevant, I can answer it as we go. I will, but if not, don't worry, I'll catch it in Q&A for you. So what are we going to have a look at covering today? I'm going to talk briefly on business models. So when you're setting up how to choose what kind of model is right for you, we're going to look at equipment, lighting, safety. I'm going to whiz you through my new one workflow. And I want to cover some styling tips and hints for you as well there. And then we'll move on to Q&A. So if that all sounds good, sounds interesting, you're in the right place, do stay and enjoy. If you want to duck out and grab a glass of wine and come back, I'll just about forgive you. But send one to me. So who am I? Why Ellie? I've been a newborn photographer 14 in training for 12 years. I used to be a teacher, 2 business degrees. My latest one, I only actually got last month in digital marketing. I really believe you can never, ever stop learning and never stop improving your skill set. I've got my associateship with the BIPP and the SWPP. I've judged for Venture Awards and most recently the Click Awards. I've spoken at numerous photography events, written for magazines, and I do lots of webinars like this one. Why do I think I'm a good teacher? I think what helps is that I run a portrait studio too. So I've got real clients coming to me, just like hopefully you all have. I work with current labs. I've got all the current equipment and I know what's kind of going on the scene out there. And I'm affected by everything that goes on in the world, just like you guys are. So with the current climate and the economic things and the heating bills people have had, that affects me just as it does you. And I think that helps me stay relevant to you all. So hopefully that makes it worth me speaking to you. But ultimately, the reality is I'm just someone who loves babies. And while I can teach you all the skill sets, this is a job that you can't do if you don't love babies. You just need to have that patience and enjoyment with them because that's what you're spending so much of your time working with. So that's me. And then I'm going to tell you why the Flash Centre. So if you're not aware of the Flash Centre, they're a lovely company that's hosting and putting on this webinar for us today. They stock everything to do with lighting gear, cameras, equipment, backdrops, lighting stands, you name it. If you need it, they've more than likely got it. I got my first set of Ellencrum lights from the Flash Centre 20 years ago, which makes me feel really old, back when I was a hobbyist. And I don't know if it's a good model for Ellen or not, but those lights are still going strong and I still use them in the studio now. So I can highly recommend them. But why the Flash Centre? They're a group of experts. They're mainly UK based. If you have an issue, you can get someone on the phone or an email and actually speak to a real person, which is really good. But also they've got the finger on the pulse. They know the latest equipment. They know the latest needs of all the different photographers. They're always reaching out and saying, hey, what do you need? Or how is this? Or test this out. Let us know if it works for you. And I've never, ever been upsold or recommended something that I don't actually need. So it's a company that I really, really trust. If they say they're going to get back to you on something, they do. So if you do need anything lighting wise, camera wise, anything like that, I really do hand on heart recommend a Flash Centre. I'm not paid to say that. It's a genuine recommendation. I've used them for 15 years and wouldn't look anywhere else. 20 years, should I say. So you want to be a newborn photographer. Can't recommend it highly enough as long as you enjoy your babies and you enjoy photography. It is a great job. It fits in very well with family life. Being your own boss and setting your own hours is really helpful. I think I'd find it hard to be in employment again because I love the freedom and flexibility of controlling my own diary. Your earning potentials can be huge. And also it fulfills that creative itch. Most of us probably don't go, hey, I want to make loads of money, I'll be a photographer. You look into photography because you enjoy the photography side of it and creating things and seeing that something you've made from start to finish. So it is a really good job. It has its downsides with sick pay and holiday pay. You've got to learn to account for all of that. But I couldn't recommend it highly enough. I started when my children were about 3 and 5, and it's just been, and I was a single parent at the time. So it really fitted in well with family life and juggling everything, which I know probably applies to quite a few of you. So when you've decided you want to be a newborn photographer, the next thing you need to look at is what kind of business pricing, where in the market you want to sit yourself. And it's really important that you do the sums. You can't just look around and go, okay, well, that competitor there is about my skill level and they're charging X. And that one over there is a little bit less than me. And that one's a bit more. I'll put myself in the middle. You need to know all your numbers, all your figures, your bottom line. Otherwise, you find sometimes a lot of people I've trained with, we've looked at it and we've done the breakdown and they would have made more money working in Tesco stacking shelves. So you've got to make sure that you know your numbers, know what you want to earn and work out backwards how you're going to earn that. Something I want you to consider as well is whether you want to be low price, high volume, somewhere in the middle, or lower volume and higher price point. I would always warn people that being somewhere in the middle is probably the worst place to be. It's like the most competitive icky bit. I very much chose to go for a lower volume but a higher price point and a higher service. And that gives me the time to give my clients a fabulous experience, a really good service and all the attention. Because when you're emailing people and messaging people, so much of your time as a photographer isn't taking photos, it's everything else that goes on behind it. And I know if I went high volume, those kind of things would slip. There's nothing wrong with being lower price and higher volume, but I think it's easier to earn more when you go in as more of a luxury end photographer and do the full service. So it's something I'd strongly encourage you to consider. And just one more point on that as well, is when you're starting out, a lot of people go, I'm not very good yet, or I've not got the confidence yet, so I'm going to price myself lower. And when I get better, I'm going to up my prices. And what I'd actually say is if you're brand new, put your prices where you want to be earning in about 3 to 5 years' time. Because if you go low price now and then you build the business up and then you start increasing your prices, you kind of lose all those first clients that you've made because they're not now the right market for you. And you have to start all over again. So go in high from the beginning, get your skill set where you need it to be. But as you're building up those client numbers, by years 2 and 3, you should be bringing in the nice salary that you're looking for. I hope that makes sense for you. Other considerations you need to look at is, are you going to be in a studio? Are you going to do it from home? Are you going to be mobile? I worked from mobile for about 3 or 4 years until I could afford my own studio. So those of you who do pack up your cars loaded to the brim and go off to clients' houses, completely sympathize with you. But whichever one you do, they can all still be a luxury business. It's just purely how you market. So if you haven't got the ability to have a studio or you can't have one at home, don't fret about going to people's houses. All you do is you spin your marketing. So you say, I've got all the gear. I bring everything to you. You don't even need to get dressed. Your toddlers have got all their toys in their bedrooms at home if you've got any older kids. So it's really convenient and really easy. And I just bring everything we need to you. And then when I got my studio, I flipped that marketing on the head and kind of said the same, but it was like, I've got everything here. All you need to do is leave the house and come over. And I've got all the accessories, and I've got toys for toddlers, and I've got spare nappies, and just literally come along and it's all at the studio. So it doesn't matter which option of those three you're at. There's pros and cons of all of them, but you can still offer a really good quality service. The only thing I would advise is if you're going mobile and you're going to people's houses, don't be tipping up with like IKEA bags and carrier bags and all the different, your bowls and furs and everything carrying in. Buy some nice suitcases or some nice quality plastic boxes with lids and take everything in looking nice and professional. When you tip up with like a trolley of neatly stacked boxes, it looks far neater than the carrier bags. And that's a lesson I learned from experience. There's a little freebie tip for you as well. Okay. That's just a little picture of the current studio setup I've got. I have got a really big space. I'm quite fortunate. And on one of the back walls, opposite this wall with the wardrobe bit, I've got all my paper drops. I should have uploaded one of those. But just to give you an idea of the kind of space that I'm lucky enough to work in now. And then once you've got your idea of where you'll be working, you need to also have a think about what style of photography do you want to offer. Having a clear style really helps you be more marketable. If you're a bit of a jack of all trades and say, oh, I can do anything you want, it confuses the clients a bit. So whether you choose to go down the colourful route, earthy, neutrals, whether you want to go boho, if you're doing posed or more relaxed lifestyle posing, do what you love because you're spending a lot of time doing this. So don't follow all the crowds and the trends. Find something that resonates with you that you really want to shoot and want to edit and want to sell, and then market that to your clients. And actually it helps because sometimes I'm quite a neutrally earthy kind of toned person. And for a long time, one of my biggest competitors locally, she was really bright and colourful. And it actually meant that our clients found the right photographer and we weren't fighting over the same clients, because if they wanted colour, they went to her. If they wanted earthy neutrals, they came to me. So don't be afraid to find a style that you do like. And bear in mind as well, sometimes it takes a bit of testing to find the style. You might think you want to do one thing, and when you try it, it doesn't gel with you. So don't be afraid in the early stages to test out lots of different looks and then see which one resonates and evolve with that new work. So looking at all the equipment that you might need, I'm going to go through some of these in a little bit more detail, but we're going to look at the lighting, camera and lens choices, whether you're going to use what kind of posing station you're going to use, or a beanbag, backdrops, props, outfits, other essentials. So this is coming up next. Okay. So the first one we're going to look at is lighting. So you might hear a lot of people talk about continuous or flash. You get lots of different things bandied around. So in a nutshell, a continuous is a light that is always on. You light your subject with the light on, you can see it, and that's what you'll get in the camera. A flashlight is a flat light that's triggered by the camera only when you take the photograph. They usually come with a modeling light, which can either be a bulb or an LED, but it's a softer light. So it helps you place the light and you can see where it's going to fall. But the actual stronger flash only fires when you take the second that you take the photograph. There's pros and cons of both, so let's have a little look at them both. The hobo light is one that I've got, and this light is amazing. You can't really tell from these pictures, but it's tiny. If you can see, it's about this big. It's really, really small. It's really lightweight, and it's perfect if you're a mobile photographer because it doesn't take up much room in the car. You can pre-charge them as well, so you can charge the battery or you can run it off the mains, which is really helpful because then you're not tied to cords everywhere. But the best thing about a continuous light is that what you see is what you get, especially if you use a mirrorless camera, then it will literally exactly what you see on the LCD screen or through your viewfinder will be what photographs. So for beginners, it's really great because you can fine tune, tweak, and you can move it like millimeters to get the shadow to fall exactly where you want it to. So I did find that people who learn with a continuous light, it shortens that learning curve of light placements and how to get the beautiful butterfly shadows under the nose because you can see it before you press the shutter. The other thing that's really good with continuous lights, like the hobo light, is it's great for videos as well as stills. So I can literally flip my camera from still mode, switch it onto video mode, and the lighting matches perfectly. So, everyone's now doing all the reels on Instagram and TikTok and things. Often it's like you'll see a really well lit still finished portrait, but the video will be on an iPhone with dark grainy light from the room or a different window, and it doesn't match and it's all blurry. If you can get a continuous light and switch between the two, your social media reels will have a really high quality video to them as well as your stills. So it's a nice little extra with it. The con, I suppose, is they're not as a cheap starting price point. So you might need, it's one to invest in if you can do. You can get cheaper flashes to get you going though. And the other thing with the hobo light is sometimes you need to up your ISO a little bit. They're not as powerful as the flashlights at the moment, so it can bring in a little bit of grain. But having said that, I've still printed wall art at like 40 inches, which is, huge from these files, and there's no bad grain in the file at all. So they're perfectly capable to deliver to clients. A flashlight then. Here's the flashlights that I've got, Elinchron ones. They start with some really small D-light ones, which are actually, if you're a new photographer, a D-light one is the perfect starting light because the body is quite shallow. It's about half the size of the picture on here of the light on the left here. What the advantage as well as the price point with these is they freeze motion. So they're really fast flashes. So if you've got toddlers with moving hands or running around or sitters that are starting to crawl, this will freeze them and give you a really sharp picture, which you don't always find I get with a continuous light yet. The other beautiful thing with these is you can control the power of the light from your camera. So if you've got, I don't know, your toddler or your baby in position and you take your shot and realize it's too bright or too dark, you can just literally press the button on top of your camera to turn it down rather than having to get someone to stand with the baby, or you walk over to the back of the light and turn it. So that's a really, really nice thing about the flashlights. When you get more advanced, you can also group these, so you can have several lights and you can get them firing separately together or in different combinations. Now, I don't do that for newborns, but I do that for maternity, so it's another nice advantage to them. You can get wireless, like battery chargeable ones of these, but not as they're not as cheap. They're the more expensive models, not on your D lights, which are your very cheap entry ones. And then the nice thing with flash is you can use it on your lowest ISO that your camera goes to. So you're always going to get beautifully crisp, sharp portraits with every eyelash in focus on them. If you're unsure on any of those, feel free to ask me more info on them. But what I wanted to just reassure you is whether you go for a flashlight or an LED light, it actually doesn't make a difference. You'll get the same results. Light is light, is how you control it and where you place it. So have a look at these images here. We're going to call this pink one number 1, and we're going to call the cream baby on the right number 2. Which light do you think has been taken with a flashlight? Is it 1 on the left or 2 on the right? Stick that in the chat for me and let me know what you think. Okay, I've got a fair few ones coming in. Oh, everyone so far is saying 1 for flash. So you're all thinking, okay, a little bit of a mixture. Right, so having a quick glance at the chat, I'm going to say so far about 80% of you think it's number 1. It's actually number 2. The left one, the pink one, was lit with the hobo light, and the cream on the right was written with the flashlight. But to be fair, there's very little difference. If I hadn't shot that, I don't know that I would know which one each was taken with. The fall off on the shadows is really similar. Even the little bit of the shadows behind the toes is really similar. So don't be put off by the groups of people you might hear out there saying, oh, you have to use this one, you have to use that one. Light is light. It's what you choose to do with it, where you place it, how you soften it with the modifiers. That's the easiest. Stephen says me what I use at the moment. Do you know what? I swap between depending on how bored I am with each one. So one day I'll use one day I'll use another. Gives me a bit of a challenge. If I've got toddlers in, I will tend to always stick with my flashlight. So if I've got a newborn with a toddler, I tend to stick with flash because I find that a lot easier to make sure the toddlers are sharp and in focus. Fall off of the background for me. These aren't going to be exact. What I should really do is set this up with one baby and switch the lights out. But, it's a close comparison though. So I'm just going to give you another example. So on this one, we're going to call the bed number 3 and we'll call the bucket number 4. So is 3 or 4 lit with flash? Again, a nice mix again. Oh, we're really close on this one. I can't call it from your answers here. Okay. Are you almost 50-50 on who's answering what to this one? On this one, the bed was lit with the flash and the bucket was lit with the hobo light. There's a little bit of a difference here, and I can explain that to you. The flashlight is a little bit senior, and it's because my flash can take big modifiers. So when you've got a photograph of a baby in a prop, the light's a little bit further back. So if I'm using a flash, I get a slightly creamier or softer fall off in the shadows, whereas the hobo light, it's not as big a modifier. So when I pull that further back, you bring in a little bit more shadow and fall off. But my overall question then to you is, okay, we've had a game of which is which, but would you all be happy presenting either of those to families? Is any of them crap, or are they all giving off decent light? Hopefully you're all going to say that they're all decent lights. So I just wanted to show you that, like, it doesn't matter which you use, it's just how you choose to use it. I use both and I offer both of these to clients and they're all really happy with them. So with my hobo light, I'm shooting just a little bit higher at about, well, between 200 and 400 ISO. My Fujifilm only goes down to, I think I'm at 160 for my lowest anyway, so it's really not overly different. And modifier size, usually I always say, right, you want to use the biggest modifier you can fit in your space because it's going to give you a lovely, soft and creamy light. However, what I'd like to say is, remember the size of a baby. So if I've got a 1 meter square softbox, in fact, let me just bring a different, on this picture here, the one on the left you can see is a 1 meter square softbox, a Rotox Elinquin one. And the one on the right is a 150, I think, indirect. And that just means the light sits inside and it's rear facing. So it bounces off the inside, it comes back even softer. This 100-meter one I've used for years and years and years, and it's a 100-meter. That would be insane. 1 meter. I've used it for years and years. And while it's not a massive light, when you put a baby next to it, it's really big compared to a baby. I've switched for the bigger modifier more often because I do quite a few family photographs as part of my newborn session. And I can do it on the 100, but the larger the softbox, the creamier and softer light it gives across the whole family. So if you can get a bigger softbox, go for it. But don't be afraid if you can't. 100 meters, keep saying that all day now, aren't I? 1 meter square or a 135 octabox are the ones I tend to recommend for starters because they're the cheaper modifiers as well, but they'll do absolutely fine for maternity, sitters, newborns. It's only when you get bigger families in that you might find you need something bigger. So, right, let me keep going because I know I've got a lot to get through. When it comes to camera and lens choice, it's a bit like cars. There is no one make or model which is leagues better than another one. It's what fits you best. So I always suggest go in, hold cameras, see if you like the feel of them. I love Fujifilm cameras. They're what I've been shooting with for the last probably 12 years. Before that, I shot with Nikon. But when I picked up the Fujifilm, everything it's all dials and buttons, and it felt like I didn't have to dip into menus to change things. And I like a dial and buttons and things to tweak. Whereas if I've used a Sony, they're also great cameras. Everything was hidden in the menu. And for me, that kind of felt I was breaking my flow of setting up a scene, having to come away, go into a menu to find what I wanted to change to go back again. Whereas the Fujifilms, it's just on there. You can just twist to change your aperture or your ISO or anything. So, but all cameras will serve what you need. The main thing really is your lens choice. And this is where I think when you're working with newborns, an 80mm lens might be a beautiful lens and give you great bokeh and separation and be really a really flattering lens. However, it's too long to work with a baby with unless you've got a permanent studio assistant or spotter with you. So I recommend for most people, if you're on a full frame camera, a 35 to 50mm, somewhere either a zoom that covers that or a 35 or a 50 will give you enough that you can have one hand on the baby, you can set your camera up, you can lift your hand to take your shot, put your hand back down again. If you're on a crop sensor like I am, then that's the 23 to 35mm equivalent. But just something that lets you have that nice close working distance with the baby that you're working with. Be careful of going too wide a lens because when you're working with babies and you're quite close, if you photograph them with a lens really close to them, you'll get that like distorted alien shaped head at the top. So 35 to 50 on a full frame, 23 to 35 on a crop sensor is usually a safe bet. Someone's just asked me, actually, do I need to have to correct wide angle distortion in the edit? Not if you stick with a 35 or a 23 on a crop. That should be plenty enough to get you shot without needing to edit anything. I'm very much a get it right in camera person. A 35 will cause a little more distortion than a 50, but only if you're photographing them like really, really close. If you're just a little bit further back, you don't tend to notice it. A lot of it is preference. Have a play with both. Borrow one off a friend if you can. See what you like the look of the most. And the other thing that I do like as well is I'd always recommend going for a camera. If you can get a mirrorless, I would, because it makes it far easier to see exactly what you're getting. But get one with a tilt screen for newborn photography. It's really nice when you've got the baby on the floor and you're stood over them, you're holding the camera, you can just tilt the screen so you can see exactly what you're focusing on and how you're composing it rather than having to hold it above and hope you're getting it right. And then you're not stood on anything again either. Lucy, 35 to 50 millimeter on a full frame, 23 to 35 millimeter on a crop sensor. Hope that helps you. Okay, so when it comes to your posing station, there's so many different things people are using at the moment. People are using tables, people are using beanbags, people are using dog beds, people are using trampolines. There's a whole mixture. And again, there isn't a right or a wrong. It's what works best for you. So years ago, I had a beanbag like this one on the right, very similar. This one's from the Mother Bean, and it's great with the pockets, and it's non-slip, and it's a really nice beanbag. But I also found that I was getting really bad backache, lower back pain quite a lot from that position of sat on the floor leaning over babies at a really weird angle. And my physio was like, and this is a good 10 years ago, she's like, Ellie, you've got to change something. Your back's not going to cope. So we looked at building a platform. So you can see on this image here, you might recognize this. It's an IKEA Kallax unit. That's what I use. I've attached a desktop from IKEA on top of it to give me more depth to the Kallax unit. And then on the wall, I've got a curtain pole, which is like a £3 B&Q job. So it's all cheap and cheerful, but it looks really smart. And then on top of the table, I use a piece of foam furniture cushion, and I've cut a hole in the middle, which is about 12 inches. I drew around the dinner plate just to give me that little dip. Rather than having to always put beans under a baby to pad them up, I just dip down a little bit into it. But that's where it doubled up as storage. So while I've got a nice studio space, I needed to help keep it clean and organized. So I've got my little, all my colour furs are in there. I put LED lights in it and glass doors. So it looks really blinky when you walk in. It doesn't quite look like an IKEA unit, even though we all know it really is. And the trampoline dog beds work well as well. They're quite flat and you can be sat on the floor with those. Again, it's just what works for you. If I was mobile, I'd probably go back to using like having the dog beds because they're really lightweight and portable. The beanbags take up a good chunk of a car. If you've got a small studio space at home, you might want to go for the beanbag. If you've got a bigger one, I can't recommend a table highly enough. Baby's always safe on it because you never leave them at a height. You're always there with them. I sit on a hairdresser stool in front of that unit. So I'm literally sat down, straight back. Baby's a perfect height in front of me. And I find when you're comfy, it also gives you a lot more patience because you're not leaning and bending. You're sat quite happy, chatting, holding baby, posing them, and you're comfortable at the same time. It does look really smart. All my clients say how nice it all looks. So that's something to consider. And the posing table, my entire setup, including the Kallax things, it was probably about £80, I think. So it really is on a par, if not cheaper, than a lot of the folding tables and things you might see. Actually, you can pay hundreds and hundreds for folding tables. With the ones you can get that are newborn tables that are designed to be portable and fold, just make sure you feel confident it can bear the weight, because I've seen lots of mishaps where legs have buckled or whatever on certain makes. So just do your research, make sure you find reliable ones that you've had good reviews from if you do go down the portable tables. But the other thing as well is if you're mobile, the foam that I use, you could actually just use that on the floor. There's no harm in that. You could put the foam on the floor, clip your backdrop to a low backdrop stand, and that would work for you as well. I cut a hole out of the foam, Stephen. It's like a dinner plate size little hole circle in the middle of that foam. Okay. And when it comes to backdrops and props, especially when you're new, don't feel that you've got to buy loads. You don't need a lot to start with. All you really need is probably 3 different top layer blankets, just in case you've got a baby that poos on all of them. Most of the time when I buy my backdrop blankets, they come with a matching wrap, so that's even easier for you. I'm shouting out to Blessence, who's the company that I tend to use for most of my blankets and wraps. She's a photographer herself, Rebecca, that runs it. So she cuts the size. She's really good with knowing the right kind of textures and things. But you literally need 2 or 3 to start with, and then you can add in more once you start making more profit on it. I'd recommend just a couple of floor drops and just a few outfits, and probably 2 bowls, 2 props. Once you start making money, you can reinvest. But also, once you start working, your style will evolve, and then you know exactly what route you want to go into. So many people I've met have spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds on different props and accessories. And then they go, oh, actually, I want to go all whites and neutrals. And then they de-stash it all and lose so much money. So start small and add in. I've got lots of questions coming in. I'm going to go through these more at the end. But just briefly, I would always say go for a couple of colours, like maybe a creams. And then you can add in different colour wraps to accessorize more. So rather than if you're wanting to do colourful, rather than going for all like purples, blues, greens, yellows, everything to start with, buy a base kind of colour that you think you can accessorize with the different wraps and headbands to make it a lot more colourful initially. That's probably a tip for you. Okay, so what other things do I consider essentials? These are a couple of things that I would not like to be without in my studio. The one on the left is called a Lullavibe, and it is basically a vibrating cushion. There's other makes and models out there. You can get one called a rocket that attaches onto something solid like the table, and that rocks the whole thing. But this is just a soft pad that vibrates. And if I've got an unsettled baby, often just laying it on their back or putting it next to them helps kind of settle them down a little bit. The next thing that I strongly recommend everybody gets is hot water bottles. When you're settling babies down, they're all warm and cozy against your body. And then when you go to put them on either your posing blanket or in a prop, you're moving them from something warm to something cold, and they're really going to notice that. So I've got 3 or 4 hot water bottles, and I preheat every surface that I think I might use with the baby that day. And then I move the hot water bottle off as I put the baby down. So they're never touching, they're never together, but it means that the blanket I put baby on is just as warm as it's been against my chest. And so they notice that movement far less when they're going from one warm place to another warm place. And you can get microwavable wheat packs. I've tried those, but hot water bottles just hold the heat for a good couple of hours. So it should do you right through your session. And then on the right in that picture, there's this little orange and white thing. It's called a baby shusher. And literally, it's one of my favorite devices. It's a little machine and it just goes shh, the whole time. So it's a really nice bit of white noise that helps settle the baby. I like to have music on in the studio or the radio, and I'll chat with parents. I don't keep it really quiet. Most babies actually settle quite well when it's noisier. But the white noise is really good because it's consistent. And also, it means if you like knock something or drop a lens or, I don't know, make startling noises, it kind of masks them. So the babies react far less to the general noises going on in the studio. See, I wish I had these, Lucy, when I had my babies, but this came out after. But yeah, strongly recommend baby shushers. And then on the right-hand side, just some posing beans. I love having posing beans. If you're on a budget when you start, you can always use folded up hand towels, muslins, and even rolled up football socks work quite well at making really cheap kind of. You can roll them into the same shape as a bean. But the more you do, it's really convenient and quicker and easier to have a posing bean that knows about the right shape. And they look a little bit smarter than rolled up socks too. But again, start where your budget allows you. If you've not got much of a budget, you can't go wrong with hand towels and muslins. And then as you bring in the income, then you can start investing in things that make your life a bit easier. But that's a little array of things I wouldn't want to be without. And then I also always have baby wipes and hand sanitizer on at hand as well. I've got one of those little IKEA kitchen trolleys, and all this goes in there, and I can carry it around the studio, wheels around the studio with me. So everywhere I go, I've got wipes and everything white mixed in it. And then another, what I would call essential, and I'll come to this again in the safety bit, but when you're doing newborn photography, you 100% absolutely need to have a camera strap. If you're doing any kind of shots where you're holding the camera over the baby, you can't drop it. Like you just can't risk dropping it on them. So always make sure you've got a strap. Now, lots of people I've trained and worked with will use a neck strap. A neck strap is still much better than no strap. So I'm not saying don't, they're bad. They're not. But what I find is with a neck strap, often people end up, they can't quite get where they want with it around the neck. So they take it off and wrap it around the wrist and then hold it up. And actually the better fix, I think, is these spider hand straps. They come on a belt holster if you want. So I have a belt that takes 2 cameras, one on each hip. You've got the strap, which is a general hand strap. If you want the extra security, it can also go around your wrist too. But it means I can hold it above the baby. Even if I let go of it, it's literally going to just stay right there in my hand. And then when I've taken my shot, it clips into this little holder on your belt. And then it means I'm instantly hand-free. So if I want to move the baby from, say, my posing table into a prop on the floor, my camera's on my hip, it goes with me. So then I don't ever have to leave the baby alone. You're never like, oh, I need to go get my camera because I'm going to stand with the baby while I wander off. It just keeps it all with me. And the other thing I found when I did before now use a camera around the neck, is you've got actually, it sounds dark, but you've got to be quite careful. If you've got the baby on the beanbag or your blanket and you're working with them, when you lean forwards and you've got the camera around your neck, it can swing towards the baby. So having it on a hand strap, for me, it's the safest, easiest, most convenient way of working. There's probably other makes out there, but the Spider I've used for years and highly recommend them. So, okay, safety training. I'm sure a lot of you know this already, and there are stacks of free resources and YouTube videos and all sorts out there for you. But just to run through, Never, ever, ever leave a baby unattended. So you might have them in the perfect pose and then you need something and you've forgotten it. You cannot leave that baby. You either get the parent to pass it you, or you get a mum and dad or whoever's there to stand with the baby while you do whatever you need to do and come back again. When you're moving babies around, always support the head and the neck. Babies are very head heavy and they've not got good muscle control. So make sure you're holding their heads when you're moving them about. Anytime I have the baby in any of my props, I have a spotter. What do we mean by a spotter? Literally somebody whose job is to catch that baby, make sure they're safe and secure where they are, put hands on them if they need to, and worst case, catch them if they were to roll off tonight, and we've got one. So always have a spotter there. If you can have a studio assistant, great. I've never had one. I always work on my own. So I always make sure mum and dad know exactly what's expected of them before we start doing this prop work. Never stand on anything over a baby. I've seen other people do it, and I just think your instinct, if you were to fall, is to put your foot down. So never ever stand on anything over a baby. Stand flat on the floor, and that's why I love the mirrorless, because it allows me to safely get the camera over them with my wrist strap while my feet are firmly planted on the ground. And keep an eye on the baby's temperatures. Newborns have difficulty in regulating their temperature. Some will run hot, some will run cold. A lot of trainers might tell you the room should be X degrees. I don't ever say that. I actually think that every baby has got its own internal thermostat. And it's more important that you just put a hand on their back or the back of or the chest. Don't worry about if they've got cold hands and feet, because lots of babies have, even when in the perfect temperature. But if they just feel warm to touch on the back or the chest, perfect. If a baby starts to sweat, they're sheep hot. If they go really blotchy, very blue and red, they're probably a bit cool. But generally, just putting your hands on their torso should be enough to give you a guide of whether they're in the right kind of range. Okay. Where else we got? Never force a pose. Not every baby likes every pose. And while you or the parents might be desperate to get this one particular pose, baby doesn't like it. They don't like it. So don't do anything the baby's not comfortable with. When I had my youngest daughter, she would only lie on one side. She absolutely would not lie the other. And in the end, actually, we got her chiropractor the neck for her. But lots of babies have got certain positions they do or don't like being in. So work within the limits of what that baby shows you they're comfortable with.
But obviously, what?
Some of these are quite obvious. Never ever use a glass or breakable props. Make sure everything is baby friendly as much as you can. And then also, if you need to do anything where a baby, like the frog pose or hanging from branches, composite for safety, you never actually just leave them hanging. Always make sure that you were doing supported before and your different angles and you Photoshop them together. Loads more detail on that is available all over the place online for free, or feel free to email me and ask me if there's anything you're not sure on. And then lastly as well, I really recommend you consider a pediatric first aid course. I think you can never be overprepared enough. And it's also a nice marketing thing to tell your clients that you've qualified as a first aider for babies. Okay, I've got loads I want to get through, so I'm going to speed up a tiny bit.
But what?
Client prep. I actually tell my clients very little before they come. I used to send out a big long prep guide with all these instructions, and I found that new parents are usually really they're very tired, they're a bit information overload. They've got no free time because they've suddenly got this little being that demands their attention all the time. So all I actually tell my families to do is bring extra milk, and they can do breast or bottle, both is welcome, but always bring a little bit extra if they're bottle feeding. A blanket from home, because it will smell like mum when you settle them down, and put that blanket on, it's going to help them feel all kind of settled, and the smell will remind them of home and security. A dummy if they have one. I never force a dummy or soother, or whatever you want to call them, if they've never had one, but if they've got one and they're used to it and the parents forget to bring it, they find it really hard to settle that baby down. And I try and tell my parents to time it so they're due a feed on arrival if they can. What I want is mum and dad to give them a feed when they get to the studio and get that milky drunk feeling, and then baby tends to go to sleep. And I do talk to my parents about colour choice before they come as well, and ask what colour preferences they've got so I can start setting things up. And we'll briefly say about parent and sibling clothing, which is to match basically the colour style that they've chosen, or something nice, creamy, and neutral. But yeah, sometimes with parents, I think less is more. I'm going to show you in a moment a little bit of my workflow, but what I want you to be aware of is you need to shoot to sell. So don't just go shooting 150 different frames and think, yeah, this is a great batch. Work out what you want to sell and then go backwards. So I like to sell all my clients one of these folio boxes, which holds 20 fine art prints and then usually a collection of wall art. So I only need about 25 images. I don't need hundreds. And when you're showing clients images in the viewing room, you show them too many, you get total information overload. So think about what you want to sell, work backwards. Um, okay, so why do we need a workflow? It makes you consistent, it keeps you time efficient, it's a good backup plan if things aren't going as well as you want them to, or the baby's really unsettled, and it's a good of professionalism. I'm just looking at the time here and I'm aware of like, I've got loads more that I wanted to get through. I'm hoping the sound is all right. I'm quite near my mic, so let me know, Kate, if it's not. Right. So what I have got, just a quick little plug for you, is I've got some workshop days coming up that the Flash Centre are hosting. We've got Leeds on the 29th of August, Birmingham on the 5th of September. And the reason I'm mentioning this now is what I'm going to do on these workshops is slowly go through my workflow and show you how I light, all the angles I take, and we've got all the time in the world to do that. The Flash Centre are subsidising these for you. So they are a ridiculously cheap price of an early bird price of £79 for a day, which is a 10 to 4 and includes lunch. Now, usually I'm at least £400 for a place in a workshop with me. So this is a really good deal. There's only 10 per day. So if you're interested in it, grab it before they go, because this isn't something I do very often. As I said, the Flash Centre are subsidising this for you guys. But on it, we're going to cover workflow, posing techniques, lighting skills, editing tips, styling secrets, and I'll go through the sales techniques as well. So let me just quickly show you. This is an example of a finished client gallery, okay? And what I want you to see is everything just blends together. If I was selling a client a blanket shot or a prop shot or a parent shot, all of those would work and look really nice on the wall together. They've all got the same color scheme and themes, okay? And again, on this next one, it's a totally different color scheme, but all the creams and tints and like light browns all work really well together, which helps you sell combinations to clients because all the images fit as like a nice collection. So, if you want these slides, we can email them out after, or this this whole talk will be emailed to you, so you've got the recording. So don't worry if I'm going through this lightning fast. I just want to get through it before it's time for questions. But all I do a really, really simple workflow. It's not complicated. I do blanket shots at the beginning and I do 3 poses, a side of the tushy, which is the bum up, and a head on hands. And then I'll do them laying in a bowl or a bed. And then I'll do them in a bucket or a bowl, looking down on them. And then I'll do my parent shots. At some point, I pull out a macro. But it's really simple. I don't do frogs. I don't do fancy composites. I don't do potato sack. I've literally stripped it back to simple, but it's gone down really well with the parents. Now, you might all have your own different workflow, and that's fine. But what I want you to do is look at the shots that you like and create a workflow so that you know in every shoot that what you're gonna be producing for each client. So my blanket poses are literally just inside, bum up, head on hands. And just to show you, when I do the side pose, these are the exact angles and photos I take. So you need to know in advance when you've got that baby in a position, how quick can you bang, 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 got those angles. Let's accessorize it and put a wrap, a hat, a headband on. We'll do the same again. And then you move on. It makes your session really quick and it stops you from overshooting. So lots of people, when the baby's gone to sleep, you don't always know the right angle where you want to be. So you take a lot, and we've all done it. But then you realize that you've been 10 minutes on this one pose, and that's 10 minutes of baby sleeping time, which is quite precious. Newborn photography is weird, and it's one of the few where you've got that real quick time limit in a studio. Lots of other genres, you can move fine, you can get them to move about, but a newborn is very much you moving them and just in the windows that you can. So my lighting for this would be, if you imagine the little figure dude is our baby lying on the blanket, the head would be to the left towards the light. My light is well in front of the baby, and I'm using this soft fall off light, like the still light on the edges of the soft pot. We call it the feathered light. That's what's lighting the baby. That's where my light placement is on all of my blanket work. And it doesn't matter whether it's continuous or flash, it's in exactly the same spot. So this is then when I move the baby onto the tushy, and you'll see those same angles again, but just with different accessories on them. And then for head and hands, this is what I mean, just a really relaxed head and hands. And I used to do the frog, and then I used to do this one. And all my clients, they might ask me for the pose initially, the balanced one. But then when I showed them the baby all relaxed, they'd be like, oh, we left that one. And the frog you do is a composite. And this one, they can't go anywhere. They're really settled. So you don't need to composite it. And so it's much quicker to do. It's a lot less editing after, and the parents love it just as much. Don't be afraid as well to do awake shots on your blanket. If you have an awake baby, parents go nuts for awake shots. And then from there, I move to my bowl or my bed. So this would be the first prop that I do. And it's a really relaxed lying down. Nothing is complicatedly posed. They're just lying on their side or their fronts in a bed. If they're awake, I might swaddle them and put them on their backs. But those two different shots are the same pose, just moving around, getting different angles of them. And my lighting for that is baby, I tend to have head to the right on my props when they're lying down. And the light is it's almost the same as before, but instead I've turned the light slightly towards me, away from the baby, so that I'm not lighting the backdrop as much. I want that backdrop to be a little bit darker than the baby for these, because I like that rich look, and it makes the babies look a bit more highlighted and they pop forward a little bit. So that's how I light my prop shots. And that's exactly the same lighting for the bucket shots when they're facing upwards. I love this one, but not every baby likes being forward in a bucket. I probably do this the least out of all of my shots. For your average baby, instead of doing the forward facing one, I just wrap them or photograph them from above. It's the same lighting again. And the nice thing with it is sometimes I think it's lazy lighting, but maybe it's better just to call it efficient lighting. I don't need to be changing the light for all these. Once you've got the light in place, you can focus all your attention on the baby. And then I'll bring in siblings as well and do my sibling photos with them. So the key really, I know one of these babies is facing the other way, always light to baby's head. That's the biggest takeaway from your lighting. Light coming down like it would the sun, never light from the feet up, or you'll get that scary Halloween horror lighting. At some point, I'll pull out my macro lens and take a few macro shots. And ideally, what you want to do with a macro lens is have the light behind the baby. So light, then baby, then you. And it gives you that lovely like rim edge. So that's how I would light those. So it doesn't matter if you're in a prop on the blanket, but you want the light, then the baby, then the photographer, just to kind of give you the highlights that we're looking for there. Otherwise, you get a very flat look image. And then I will move on to my parent shots. This one is the easiest lighting in the world, and I call it my magic lighting because everybody looks beautiful in this lighting. And all you're doing here is you're standing the parents directly in front of the softbox. So the softbox becomes your equivalent of a backdrop, and you shoot into them. So that's a really easy flattering light. And then I will do parents on either a paper or canvas or a fine art kind of backdrop. And these poses here are lit exactly the same as the blanket ones where I've got subject, feathered light falling on them, and then me. And then I end on the black blanket kind of shots and the Lion King one. And all those are lit the same with just a feathered light. It's the bottom of the light on these which feathers across the baby. That really simple lighting. So I don't change the lighting setup or any of the modifiers. Same thing throughout the whole shoot. So that gives me 42 different angles of images that I'm going to take to choose my 20 to 25 from. I'm not shooting hundreds. I'm literally shooting for what I need to sell. You don't want to overdo it. So have a workflow because it keeps it simple. Keeps your colours and accessories consistent, preheat your surfaces, and shoot your products. I'm going to really quickly rattle through this because I know I'm running out of time. I just wanted to give you really quickly some styling tips. So when you style your sessions well together, it means that you can sell albums or folios or collections of wall art because everything will sit well. So although on here we've got a dark wood drop and I've got a pink ground here and then a pink floor, because I've used that same wrap and the colour tones throughout, all of those I feel would sit nicely in any combination on a wall together. So what I want you to think about is always have like common thread running through your setups. To take one element from each one and make sure something crosses over or ties them together. So in this top set here, it's maybe the pink wraps that I've used or the pink fur. The one at the bottom was the same purple outfit in every shot. It might be you just got like a headband or a particular flower maybe that you move into each photo for something that makes them look like they belong together. And then what I do is I send the parents, so I give them a colour choice. I send them to our webpage. This is on my website. Feel free to go look at it. It's in my blog bit. But they pick the colour palette they would like for the session. And it means I know that everything in each colour will match and goes nicely together. And I talk to my parents about what kind of colour they want, where in the house they might put it, what colour would look best in the living room or the bedroom. And it gets the parents really engaged and keen on buying wall art even before they've come to the session. And then with that, I've used that to build sets. So I've got like a green set, I've got a pink set. They're all the same, but you different combinations bucket here is really clever. It's the same bucket as this green one. It has magnets. It's from Hello Little Props, and it's an everlasting bucket, and you buy different magnetic covers for it. So you don't need 6 different buckets if you want to go down a colourful route. You literally just buy the magnet fronts to them. Or another way of doing it is if you've got the wrap from blanket work you've been doing, you could just take the wrap from the bait after you finished with it on the blanket, wrap it around the bucket and clamp it at the back, just some clips or pegs. And then you've got a bucket that will exactly match the colour you've been using for your blanket shots. And that is what I also do a lot of the time when I get parents in. This mum is actually wearing the blanket wrap that I used on the beanbag of the baby. And I just wrap it round her, peg it at the back. Best thing there is it's a perfect colour match. One size fits all, whether your parent is a size 6 or a 26, it's going to fit them. And it just again means that all those images sit in harmony really nicely together. I don't have loads of outfit for dads in, I have a few, but if we know we're going for a certain colour, I'll get your parents to bring clothing in of that colour. So again, they all just sit and match nicely together. So I've sped through there, but I wanted to leave some time for the hundreds of questions I've got coming in. So here are the workshop dates again. They are the only 2 dates I'm running and the only 2 locations. I can't tell you when you'll be able to get that at this price again. I think they'll sell out stupidly quickly. I hope so. So if you're keen to come on one, please do. If you'd rather a one-to-one, I offer them, but that will not be at the price point of a £79 day for this one. I think as well, they're going to email you all out the recording of today, and that will have more details and info on those workshop days as well if you wanted to. So Q&A time. Right. I'm going to have a look through and let's have a look at answering some of these questions for you. And I'm really hoping that's been helpful and I've not rushed it too much. I always want to overshare and overgive because I just love to give you all the info. So, right. How am I sanitizing the props? Most of the time, I'm not actually sanitizing them. They're lying on furs or things within the props, and I baby wipe anything out if I need to, or I've got hand sanitizer I can put in on a cloth if I really like. If they peed in it, I'll properly clean it with sprays. Blankets, anything the baby's been lying direct on, especially without clothes on, gets dirty. So I just wash everything. Make sure you're using your baby-friendly washing. I'm going to say use non-bio. I'm going to get that wrong. I think it's non-bio for babies, but the baby-friendly stuff for anything you're going to lie the baby on. Okay, let's have a look. What output will you use on the parent shots with the softbox behind them? Chantel's asking. I don't actually change the light settings, so it's on whatever it's been set out for everything else. What I do change though is most of the time, my camera settings will be on 2.8 for newborns. Now, if you are full frame, that is f4. I'm a crop sensor. I'm not someone who believes in doing the whole 1.2, 1.4 kind of shoot really wide, because I find you'll get like an eyelash in focus and then the nose and the mouth out. F4 on a full frame, 2.8 on a crop sensor is usually what I'd recommend to work with. The only time I change that is when I'm doing those silhouette ones, because if I shoot at my 2.8 or f4 on the backlit ones, there's a lot of light wraps around the front of the parents. So instead, I will put my aperture to about f8, f11 to cut the amount of light that comes through, which will still give you the white backdrop that the darker kind of parent look. Okay, so look, lots of questions. Pin one. So think of coming back in after a few years break. What's different now compared to 5 years ago? Good question, Jim. I think styling is different. I've certainly found for me that a lot of my clients are more happy with a more baby-focused portrait. So what do I mean by that? Not necessarily the frog poses or the really complicated hanging babies from trees and things. There's still a place for it. Lots of people still do it. I've certainly found in my area, the clients more want a beautiful picture that is all about their baby. There might be props in it. But prop isn't the center of attention. It's the baby that is. That's probably the biggest styling difference. And then, I was an early adapter to mirrorless cameras, but using mirrorless now and LED lighting or continuous lighting, it's a complete game changer. Like it's so easy. You can tweak and get it perfect right in front of your eyes before you press the shutter. And that's the other thing that I think is a massive difference. Okay, let's have a look. Can the lights damage babies' eyes? Good question, Walter. No, they can't. And I have spoken to proper pediatric specialists on this. We're not using flashlights as a bright power. It's quite a low power that we use, which is actually the benefit of the smaller D-light ones is you don't need the big sensitive lights. So you have it on quite a low setting, but also it's then diffused. It goes through at least 2 layers of diffusion fabric before it comes out. And then we're not actually aiming that main bit of brightness at the baby. We're using that really, really, really soft fall off light. So they don't even usually tend to notice it. Same with the continuous light. It's never so bright that it would harm a baby. It's quite a low power that you need really, because they're quite close to the baby. So you don't need to be, a blinding light. And so no, baby's eyes should be absolutely fine. How would you recommend getting started in newborn photography? Yes, building a portfolio and attracting clients. So the first thing is get your skill set in place, build a portfolio. And when you're at a place where you feel you can consistently produce a set amount of images for every client that's like on a par, that's I think when you're ready to launch, you need to know that if you have several clients coming, they're all going to get the same level of work from you. Now your work might get better over time. It should. We're always continue to improve on. But you just need to know that whether you've got an awake baby, a cranky baby, a sleepy baby, you've got the technique needed to still deliver gallery to the client that would stand alongside the other galleries that you're offering. Hope that helps. No, for newborns, I use one light. Sorry, Lucy says, do I use 2 lights for parent shots on the fine art backdrop? I only use one light in a newborn. It's that same light. Whichever light I start with, whether it's the 1 meter, a 135, a 150, that one light follows me everywhere. And in fact, I have my light stand on wheels, so it's really easy just to move it around with me. But with a newborn session, the priority is just using the time when the baby's settled, and I don't want to be faffing with moving lights, setting different things up. I almost need the technology just to work. I don't need to think about it. It just needs to do what I need it to do. So just about one light for newborns. Props are so expensive and hard to source. Who would you recommend? Okay, they are. And the minute you look for newborn photography, something, the price goes through the roof. So a lot of my actual props, some were from Charlie at Click, who used to sell the trench bowls I've got. I'm not sure they're still selling them anymore or not. But a lot of my props are actually from garden centres and antique shops. And the tip is, if you can walk around and fit your wrist to your elbow in a prop, in a bucket or a bowl, you can fit a curled up baby in it. So TK Maxx is another really good place, especially like I've got Christmas sledges and I've got some really nice wooden crates from there. So anywhere like that. And for blankets, I mean, you can get them on eBay and Amazon, but I like to use Blessants. They're like 25 to 35 pounds for a blanket and a wrap, roughly. And Rebecca is a photographer herself, so she sources really nice stuff. She cuts them to the right size. So Blessants is a reliable one. A lot of my knitted outfits come from places like Etsy or Stream and Olivia in the UK, but they are quite expensive. So don't go crazy. Start small, find something you like and you use a lot, and then add to it as and when you bring in your profit. Okay, I've had a few people ask things like, do I shoot raw? I always shoot raw because if I mess up with my lighting, it gives me that ability to change the exposure without the image breaking down. So when I give my clients the files, it's JPEGs or I print from JPEGs. I don't sell digitals. I include my digitals with whatever products I'm selling to the client. So if they buy a folio of 20, they'll get the matching 20. If they buy 4 pieces of wall art, they'll get those 4 files. But they're always just in a JPEG, so the clients can go off and reprint from them. Right, when it comes to charging, so Nick is asking, on building the portfolio, do you suggest doing it for free? And if so, with how many clients before launching? And if you were to charge, what would you charge? Okay, I have a strong opinion, but it's only my opinion. You can feel free to disagree. I think when you're getting someone in to help you learn with their baby, I don't think you should be charging them. They're loaning you a baby to practice with. At the minute you start charging, the pressure is on to make sure you get the money, I suppose, to be able to sell to them. And I think it's really nice when you have a model calling that you can focus on what you need out of it, which is taking your time, nailing the 1 or 2 poses you really want to try, rather than feeling you've got to get through 20 poses to sell to that client. I think that makes sense. There is no number though on how many. Some of you might do 4 or 5 babies and go, yeah, I feel ready to go. Somebody might need 40 babies before they feel ready to go. It's not a race and it's not a competition. It's just having that confidence in yourself that once you start charging, you know you can deliver what you're promising that you can deliver. What companies do I use to print my images and canvases? I use a mixture at the moment of Digital Lab and Loxley, and I can highly recommend both of them. They've both got great customer service. If you need any help with anything, give them a call or an email, and they're really good at getting on that phone and helping you out or emailing you back with different suggestions. Digital Lab have a lovely guy called Nick who will come to anybody's house or studio, and he brings a load of samples with him, and he's really not pushy. He just shows you what would suit good work, price points, things about what combinations work well together. So that's Nick at Digital Lab. I'd have a chat with him. Oh, of course, the boxes that I use, the folio boxes, I get mine from Graphy Studio, which is a company based in Italy, but they are amazing. I've used them for years. And what I love about them is they've got that window front to them. So when I'm selling it to a client, I talk about it like it's a living frame or a living album because you can change the picture at the front all the time. So each week or every couple of days, you can put your new favorite there. So it makes it really easy to sell because it's like a storage box, but also framed. Oh, hang on, I'm going to jump on. So uh, can I answer one more question, Kate? One more. Stephen's asked, am I using a Voto? Yes. If you are new to editing or you want to speed up your editing, go look at the Voto. It's a great new AI software, but it's a really good one. And it's brilliant for editing and it saves me loads of time. Definitely recommend that. I'm sorry I haven't got through all of the questions. There's loads more I'd love to go through. I would love to see as many of you on these workshops if you want to. If you're interested in any other training, reach out to me. If there's something pressing that I haven't had a chance to answer today, drop me an email or a Instagram. Find me on Instagram and drop me a DM there and I will get back to you on anything there that I can. I think I've just killed my slideshow. Well, there should be a thank you slide up. So thank you very much. And Instagram, it's just Elli Cassidy Portraits. So find me there or find me through the Flash Centre. You'll all get your email through tomorrow with the recording and any further info for you. So I hope it's been useful. I'm going to go get my dinner and I'm going to get a big glass of wine. Feel free to join me. It'd be nice to know you're all at home having a little celebratory drink together. Thank you very much. And hopefully see you all soon. Bye-bye.